Welcome back to Free Founders, where we share actionable lessons from the world's best solopreneurs and small business owners. This is for aspiring entrepreneurs who want proven strategies to go from zero to first sale and onwards to scale and enjoy the freedom that comes along with it. My guest today is Thibaut Souyris. Thibaut is a solopreneur and founder of SalesLabs, sales training company running profitably since 2018. Thibaut also strikes me as a really sort of successful, well-rounded founder, right? Profitable business, always comes across calm, happy, enjoying, his work, your work, Thibaut. Not tempted by scaling, we talked about before. Thibaut will, I hope, radically change how you think about sales and actually get you to do sales effectively. So expect to learn in this episode, one, the myths about sales preventing you getting to 6 or even 7 figures. Secondly, how to get to your first sale. And thirdly, how to build a scalable, productized sales funnel to help your business go. I've hired Thibaut. I've had Thibaut over for dinner. Thibaut's my go-to guy when it comes to understanding simple, effective strategies for selling. I think he should be yours too. So welcome, Thibaut.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Really nice to be there and be chatting with you again.
I've been excited about this one. Always learning a lot about sales with you. I'm going to start with a quote from one of your LinkedIn posts. Quote, prospects don't care about your product. They only care about being fired, reaching their targets, or getting their next promotion. Why do prospects only care about your product? Sorry, why do they not care about your product?
Yeah, so it's like it's coming from something like a principle I learned from Skip Miller in a training, where when you think about sales, you think about convincing people of your product, why you should buy that, or telling them everything about the features. If you've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, there's this exercise where they say, "Sell me this pen." And so people start talking about the pen, why it's the best and everything. And the truth is, if you think about how we go about our days as humans, the only thing we care about is ourselves. It's the inner kind of dialogue that's in your head, where we only think just about us. We're super kind of focused on ourselves. And that's the same with sales. So if you go and start talking about your product, your prospects typically have a conversation with you because they want to solve a problem. There's something they want to do. They want to achieve something, and they're not just there because you have a great product. They're there because they want to get a specific outcome. So that was really the kind of message in this post is examples when you are working for a company, you care about not being fired, your promotion, reaching your targets, and all these things matter to you. But you're having conversations with vendors to achieve these things, not to actually go and just use the product. So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind when you're reaching out to people and trying to sell them something, is that they will buy for their own reasons, not because you have a great product.
Yeah, that's always been one of the, coming from a product background and going into starting my own business and basically running all of my own sales for 5 years now. I think that is the profound learning, is people, the solution is just the vehicle to get you to the outcome. People don't care about the features. They care about what value each feature will deliver and how that's, what that package is going to deliver you.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a very different mentality, I think, particularly for people coming from a product background. I want to talk about beliefs, because I think there are so many misheld, bad, negative, wrong beliefs about sales, right? Sales is seen as sort of dirty, sleazy. Think of it as like the Slytherin for Harry Potter fans of the sort of the tech space, let's say, right? Product, this sort of being this Gryffindor, like sort of nice and noble thing. I don't believe that. I think people do. Why would you disagree? Why do you think sales is a noble industry?
So I think it's there's a lot of good reasons for people to be thinking that, because sales, if you think about what it was before internet, before kind of having access to everything, to kind of all the information you want for free at the in fractions of seconds, sales was really, there was this kind of misalignment of information. So the person selling had all the information about the product, or what they were selling, and if you wanted to buy it, you had to go to this person and they would tell you, okay, these are the features. And so they knew plenty of things. And so car salespeople, insurance salespeople, they kind of made this profession sound like very sleazy. And they still, I hate insurance people. My insurance broker was was really the worst for that. So for good reasons, people have a bad idea of sales. But if you think about sales in a different way, where what you're trying to do is to find a gap and make a dent in a specific problem, then it becomes very different. So consultative selling, as you could call that, is really a good way to help people solve problems. And so that's why, for me, in my career in sales, I've been doing this since I'm 15 years old, and I've met incredible people. A lot of them have turned into friends because I was able to solve problem for them by providing the right product or solution for that. So whenever you start seeing this and say, okay, I'm not trying to convince people to use something, but trying to find a gap, a problem I can help close, then it becomes really interesting. So I think that's why it's such a nice thing. Is very human in the end, where you just help people, solve stuff, and that's a really great feeling when it happens.
I like that phrase, sort of consultative selling, right? It's a conversation. You're saying, does this make sense for this person? Having that, I say conversation back and forth, but sort of a progressing towards a decision, right, at some point.
Yeah.
And I think that's spot on. I think, as you say, the problem is that we have bad references in many cases, and you're also unlikely to remember the good cases because they don't stand out quite so strongly. I want to look at a few more beliefs. Sales, I also think, as somebody, relative, say 4 or 5 years into this space, but I would still say I'm not a sales expert, right? I sort of wear many hats. Think of it as sort of complex, bit of like a dark art in a way. I mean, obviously, very good salespeople understand deep human psychology and sort of the levers there. But another quote from LinkedIn: my overly complex 6-figure prospecting routine: 1, follow up every day; 2, find 5 new prospects; and 3, add them to my sequence. That's it. Tell me about that.
Yes, sales is often, it's often seen as you said, something very complicated, where it's not. You just have to divide it into a few things. So I like to divide it in 2 phases: the prospecting phase, where you have a goal, which is to book a meeting with someone, and then the kind of sales, you could say, or the selling part, where you have to run the meeting until you close business with someone. So you could say there's other aspects of it, but in prospecting, which is getting conversations and getting people to sit with you and speak with you, either like we're doing on the virtual stuff or in person. This one is, I think, one of the toughest to do if you're doing outbound prospecting, which means that you're reaching out to people who never heard of you, never asked you anything. And so it's often like very complicated for people to understand how to make it happen. And that's a very simple process where, for me, 80% of your result and success will depend on the system you're building. And that's the system. So follow up every day. That's the first part that I always do. Is I have, let's say, contacted people, put them into a sequence, we call that. So it's a set of touch points that I'm sending them to actually go and get them to answer to my messages. The follow up is just the second part, or, once you've sent the message, you wait for a few days and you follow up. And I found that starting with this is the best way to get in the groove of prospecting, because it's a really annoying part of the job where you're doing some repetitive stuff. Most people ignore you. When they reply, they often reply and they are not happy that you contacted them. So just doing your follow up gets you in this mood of, getting started and doing that. Adding 5 prospects is basically making sure that you are putting enough fuel in the engine, where you're reaching out to some people and you know that every single day you're going to add 5 new prospects. So every single week is going to be 25, and every single month 100 people. By doing this, you're making sure that you are starting conversation with enough people to actually reach your targets, and then add them to your sequence, meaning that these 5 new prospects that I found, I start a conversation by sending them a connection request, a message, a call, or anything. But I just put them into a proactive sequence, which, as I said, is a set of touch points in the goal of having a conversation with them. And so by doing this, following up every day, finding 5 new people and adding them to your sequence, you're making sure that you got enough of these. And with time, you're going to find out that, if you add maybe 5 people every day, you're going to have, I don't know, 5 people who reply every week. And maybe out of this, there's going to be 2 in a meeting every week. So that's 8 meetings a month, and do it every day. And then you're going to have a steady flow of opportunities. And that's really a good way to get good success in sales.
Yeah, this is something I remember doing your course, and we did some consulting on it. I find it very difficult to stay motivated, sort of I mean, it's like anything, right? Repetition can be boring and it's hard to
Mhm.
stick to it. How do you stay motivated, firstly? And secondly, do you think that depends ultimately on your success rate? Because you've got a very high hit rate with your outreach. What do you
Yeah.
sort of see from personal experience and from observing, let's say, other clients you work with?
So again, to stay motivated is really about building a habit, just like going to the gym. So I've never been good at staying motivated and working out, but much better for sales. And the thing is, I've done is that a really good way to do that is to protect your time. So as a founder or anyone doing sales, you're always jumping between relationship, meaning like you're gonna talk with a lot of people at the same time, a lot of conversations. So it's a lot of work. If things are going well, you're going to be always here and there, jumping here and there in calls. That can be really tiring at some point. So what you want to make sure is that you carve some space in your schedule every day to do your prospecting. So it's called a prospecting routine, where for me, for example, every day, first thing I do is I have maybe 1 hour in my day that is there. So I actually can do my follow up, find my 5 new prospects, and add them to my sequence. And by doing this every day, you keep, you start building some momentum, and then it's just as if you were doing your morning workout. You do the first thing, the thing the less interesting, the least interesting in the day before first, and then you're done. So that I found that's a really good way to do that, to stay motivated. And some days you don't really want to do it, but you say, okay, let's just do it, so I kind of keep building this habit. And that's a really good way to find that. So that's really what I recommend.
Do you start with that first thing whilst you're sort of obviously less meetings and input from other people, but also just whilst you're sort of your motivation's at its highest, just get
Yeah.
that boring task done and then you can move on?
Exactly. And so that's for me, it's for some people it may be different, but for me, I'm very productive in the morning, a lot less in the afternoon. So just get this done. And what I found is that when it's done, I just want to keep going, okay, that's one task less. So I'm just want to keep going at it. And I found that this really helped me. And for people who are solopreneurs or who want to kind of, build their business or build something where they have more time, that's been really critical to not working that much, because as I'm doing this, I'm getting full gear, super productive, super focused, and I have maybe 2-3 hours where I'm just like really going at it. This morning, it's Monday as we're recording. I had a lot of stuff I had to do, and I took care of everything. And it started by doing this prospecting. I just got really back in the mood after traveling for a while, and that was really like a nice feeling to be able to get rid of all this work. And yeah, the first point was really this prospecting block.
If you're enjoying this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. Yeah, nice. I think that's something that I'm trying to do at the moment is so podcast leads, I will either get through personal network, which is easier, right? I reach out to you and we have a conversation, but I'm doing sort of indie hackers has been a good way to find really interesting solo founders. So I'm posting like 3 comments every morning, first thing, and then reach out to them afterwards saying, meaningful comment about the post itself, and then follow up and request they get on the podcast. But yeah, I found it very, because I tried to follow this with Prod MBA and I would do it not religiously every day, but I wonder whether it's so important to sort of see. I think the problem in my case, I never felt like I was getting consistent results. It was more having conversations around people, let's say, seeing my posts. So I would add the only automation I used was adding, let's say, 100 people a week that fit my sort of persona. And then they would sort of come into follow some posts, maybe go and follow the lead magnet, which in my case was a free product strategy book. Product strategy is simple. I think I found it quite hard. And I wonder whether you just need that. Do you think that coming from a sales background, not just the skill set, but just the practice of contacting 100 people and one person might get back to you, do you think that is essential, or really it just depends on the funnel that you've got and how effective that is?
So I mean, I think what's really important is to understand in sales, it's a lot of As you said, repetition, staying consistent, and realizing that most people will ignore you. That's the thing. And when people don't ignore you, a small portion of them will actually reply, but a big portion of these will be people who will tell you to stop contacting them. Then there's a small portion of people who would be potentially interested in speaking with you. And out of these people who are speaking with you, there's going to be a small fraction. If you're really good, there's going to be 30% of people you actually are starting to speak with you who are going to end up being customers. And that's if you're really, really good. So
So
you have a fraction of people who are actually, turning into customers. But these people, if you do things right, that's going to be largely enough to do anything you want. So
aiming for 30%, because I know, in your case, you've got a very high. I think that was also I think maybe good feedback for your product. I found it quite demotivating seeing, obviously you're like a decade ahead of me in sales and you specialize in it, but seeing, oh my God, how's Thibaut going to do this super high, hit rate, and mine, I don't know, a couple of percentage, for example. I think that can be quite demotivating. What do you think the ingredients are to get a very high, and also just to be clear to people new to sales, high reply rate means we're starting that conversation and then hopefully we're going to get a meeting with some of those people.
yeah.
And then with the meeting, we try and sell them. What do you think the factors are involved there?
So I think so. First, if you get 10% reply rate, it's already really good. That's one thing. Is getting 10% of people replying to what you're sending them is really good. And it doesn't mean that they're going to reply to 10% of the messages, but 10% of the sequences you start with them. So it may take 3, 4, 5 touch points for them to reply. So what's really important is that you need to really get that and understand that you have to have a clear understanding of the messages or things you're going to write and the people you're trying to go after. So, if you were selling product MBA, I think, or product MBA, I think what was tough with that is that you're going after product managers and you have to find the ones who are maybe good at their job, but they keep seeing that, okay, it's going to be more and more politics. I'm going to be doing less and less products. I want to be a product expert. So it's really about finding this really competitive niche or interesting niche and addressing this niche. And so it's really just about narrowing down what are their problems and what are the symptoms of their problems. And so sometimes it can get really hard to find that. And so we send cookie cutter sequences where it's just very generic about very generic problems and people won't reply. So I'll give you an example. If you go to someone who's in product and you say, hey, do you want to find a better job, or you want to get a better career, find a better job, or go on your own, and you start talking about this, you won't get much replies. But if you find people who are in the job for 5 years and haven't seen a promotion in 5 years, something like that, you could say, okay, so there's some symptoms of this. So yeah, it looks like on LinkedIn you didn't move jobs for 4 years. It also looks like in your company there's a strong growth where there's a lot more product line that are being built, but you're still stuck there. So these are concrete symptoms, and potentially if you're offering a concrete solution to that, you're going to get a lot more replies. So it's all about this, about understanding the messaging, the problems and putting that in your messages. And then there's a matter of context and timing. So if you have good timing, people like maybe are in the market or are looking for, trying to make a move, that's going to be interesting. But in most cases, they won't try to make a move. So that's really the thing, is really messaging and timing are super important in that.
Yeah, so I think there's that addressability being a key element. I think this is something I've, with coaching people to start businesses, is they might have a really nice acute problem, nice audience. So let's say, for example, someone I was working with wanted to address loneliness in elderly people.
Yeah.
And was talking about, digital solution for it, like imagine, I don't know, Tinder for elderly people, but for hanging out rather than dating. And it was like, okay, well, there's a problem there in that generally elderly people are not going to be on particularly mobile applications. And where are you going to find them, right? So are you going to print physical flyers out? If you can, great. And if you can attract them that way, maybe. But you can't just go on LinkedIn and search senior product manager and add 100 of them. So I think addressability is something I always think about. And a second thing, I suppose, is offer, right? And how compelling that is, which I tend to find with founders we overestimate, because I'm excited about my business, you're excited about your business, other people are not as excited about our businesses. And it comes back to that first point, right, about people trying to sell the product and sell the features and get everyone excited about it rather than the value there. We'll dig in a bit later, actually, to sort of the what makes a really compelling offer, what makes a good addressable market. I think you shared some nice tips there already. Are there any sort of big beliefs that you see? For example, if I look at my personal experience, a big blocker for me for probably about 5 or 6 years was, I'm a product person. I don't do sales, right? I don't do sales or marketing. It's not my thing. I'm not good at it. I don't like talking to people. So I'm just going to wait for a co-founder to sort of magically appear.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember January 2020 writing a journal entry saying, nobody's coming for you. If you want to start the business, you need to go out and make it happen. And then, started going into reading the books, following people like yourself, actually going and pitching offers to people. Do you see any big beliefs holding people back? I think, and particularly for people coming maybe from outside of sales or aspiring founders.
Yeah, so what you described is what everyone it's one of the hard truth about life and sales, as nobody's coming to help you. And if you as a founder can't go and sell what you have to sell, no one will. So no one will be able to do it. And the people who are good enough to do it, they're already doing it themselves. So for me, it's just like I'm never gonna become a co-founder or whatever because I'm doing my stuff. I don't want to sell other people's stuff. And so I don't want to be a co-founder and all the hard work of having to bring in the money. I prefer just keeping everything for myself. And so that's the thing is people who know how to do that, they just either work for a top company or they're on their own. And so that's the thing is you have to learn how to do it yourself. And when you realize what sales is really about, it's not that scary. So it's really just about finding ways to start conversations with people who fit with your ideal customer profile. And if you can find ways to do 10 conversations every day, you may not actually sell anything, but at some point, if people are always the same, so for me, typically I'm going after, people who are working in tech sales, often, sales development leaders, sales leaders. I talk to tons of them all the time, and they always tell me the same stuff. They all have the same problem. So just by talking with them, I get an idea of the problem, and then I can start building a way, to reduce that problem. And so through my career as a solopreneur, I've done that by doing consulting, training, coaching, selling online courses, affiliate links, sponsoring of my content. But basically was always the same old stuff. And then you start seeing different types of problems as things evolve. And nowadays it's really interesting because I got a lot of people who sponsor my content because revenue teams have a hard time replicating the model of sales SDRs and AEs, meaning that you have a person or an army of people who prospect, who book meetings for account executive who are going to close the business basically. But nowadays that doesn't really work as it used to. So what works really well is to find thought leaders in the space. If you're selling, let's say, a software as a service program for salespeople, it's much easier to spend money into an influencer who's going to bring you really hot qualified leads than investing in hiring someone, training someone and everything. So really the idea is always talk with people, have conversation with people, and you find out that they have often all the same problems, and there's it's complex problems, so there's different ways to address this problem. And so that's really the thing is just understand that you have to start conversation with people, and you can start conversation with people you already know. Doesn't need to be purely fresh total strangers. And so one thing I've seen now, and I talked about that with my wife this morning, is that I get a lot of opportunities from people who are friends but happen to be in sales and to fit with my ICP. And so it's so much easier now because you have people who have been working with me for a while. They keep referring me new people or asking me to help their teams and everything. And so it's just very simple. So that's really the thing is have a conversation with people. And there's no shame in closing business with someone you already know. So there's no point in just going and like finding the most cold stranger possible person ever and closing a big deal. It's like it's okay to close deals with people. It's much simpler and it helps everyone much better.
I think that's a few things to unpack there. I completely agree about the friends thing. I mean, literally just today, there's a friend of started as a client, bought 2 of my products. Just today I pitched him a sort of a third product in a couple of years. he's going to move. He's thinking of moving to Portugal. Like, we're going to hang out, probably surf together, go for beers together. So, you've come over to my house for dinner, but it's, it is not as unnatural as people think. It's just you're paying for a piece of value like anything else, right? Like buying a bottle of wine from the supermarket, you're paying for a certain type of value. Buying consultancy, you're buying a piece of value. And one thing I found very effective, I think, for people working with clients like new to sales. So with a break-free sprint, this is the new business I've been working since we last spoke. Essentially, what I'm doing is getting them from 0 to first 1 to 3 sales within 2 to 4 days. So really quick, high-pressure sprint. For some people, you can just tell the idea of pitching is terrifying. And I know before they do it, they're not going to do a proper pitch. Right? They're going to undermine themselves in some way, or just not state the price, or back out in some way. So one thing I found actually quite effective is just say, look, start with your network, friends, family, LinkedIn connections, and pitch to them. I think it takes the pressure off a little bit. It's not so scary and intimidating. And then the second thing is, I think for those that are really petrified, like super terrified, I will just say, start with the discovery call, because discovery call, you're going to see they've got a problem, and then you go, right, well, actually, I think my solution could be quite useful for them. So then sometimes they'll end up pitching. And one of my clients, Rob, got a sale within 3 days by having a discovery call, and then on the call said, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna pitch the solution, and was surprised to see that someone actually paid him for it on the call. So I think that's really, really good advice. I want to come on shortly to tactics, principles, sort of sales 101 for solopreneurs and small business owners. But I also want to talk about your journey first. I think every founder I speak to, there are sort of threads and themes that you really uncover going back. Your sales journey started cleaning airplanes, age 15 in Switzerland. What do you think you learned from that experience that sort of shaped you now, or when you started SalesLab, let's say back in 2018?
Yeah, so I started, at 15 years old. And one thing that it helped me understand is that, so there's all these, and it's really fun because if you look at the trend in the US, I don't know, is it called blue collar? I think it's blue collar, or I don't know, it's like plumbers, all these jobs that were,
blue collars, like honest
yeah,
manual labor kind of factory kind of jobs.
all these jobs where you had to do like clean stuff or whatever were seen as okay, no one wants to do that anymore. But nowadays, as no one wants to do that anymore, it's really hard to find people. And when you find good people, you pay them good money for that, because finding someone to, let's say, clean your airplane by knowing they know how to handle an airplane, the stuff you have to touch, stuff you don't have to touch. Finding someone to do that, recruiting someone, and it's hard. So people will pay good money because they want an outcome, which is a clean airplane, and they don't want to do it themselves. So that's really something I understood. So I understood a bit of this, where a lot of people, they were willing to give me money so they wouldn't waste time doing stuff. And so I understood the value of time over money. And so that's been a guiding principle for me, is that you can always do another euro, dollar, whatever. You cannot never make another minute in your life. And so when you understand that, you start valuing your time like it should be valued. So for me, my time is extremely valuable. And so I'd rather not do some stuff, pay people to do stuff that I don't want to do myself. So that's something I've learned. Another thing I've learned by being in contact with people who have small airplanes, so it's like private airplanes, but that always costs a ton of money to buy, to maintain, and everything. I was around people who had money. And so seeing all this cash, all this money, it was something that was not like, okay, like it's hard to make money, or money is scarce, there's no money. There's money everywhere. It's just like, especially in Switzerland, I've been lucky to be born in this country. It's just like money everywhere. So you don't feel like, hey, money is tough to come by. It's just everywhere. So for me, that really helped me have this kind of, you could say, abundance mindset, where I was, okay, there's always some place where you can find ways to make money. So that's been really helpful. And I understand that it may not be the case for a lot of people, but if you can, you have a phone or a computer and you're able to hear what we say, you're most likely in a space where you have opportunities to make money. So that's two things I've learned from that.
It's really interesting because it contrasts something that I've definitely struggled with, is valuing time valuing my time more than money. Right?
Yeah.
So, for example, even now, I'm 10 years into this, and running 2 profitable businesses now. Even like recording the podcast intros, I can do that. Like I feel like I'm quite good with music. I've done basic video and music editing. I said I could do that, and then I caught myself and said, no, pay €100 to someone online that does it professionally. I'm going to send a couple of messages and get this nice thing back that saves me 2-3 hours messing around with tools. So I've got better at it, but I still find it quite difficult. And I think it sort of really depends on upbringing and exposure to these kind of influences. And I think it's so important, right? Because as a solopreneur, it's definitely something that's held me back. I think definitely with Prod MBA, maybe not outsourcing enough, sort of trying to do everything. And there's a balance there, right? Of obviously, I never wanted to hire people or scale too much with Prod MBA. I don't want to do it now either. So yes, you want to do many of the things. You prospect manually still, as an example. But obviously, there are things that you should outsource. How do you make that decision about what to outsource, automate versus what to outsource versus doing it yourself as a solopreneur?
So I'm not really good at outsourcing actually. The main reason is that I've always been okay. I prefer keeping the money for myself just in case there's no more money coming by. But I've been doing this for 6 years now, and I know there's always more money coming by. So one thing is, I'm starting to work a bit with my wife, who helps me with all this because she's much better at that. And so what I've been finding a easier way for me to kind of manage my time is to go and charge amounts where I can charge a lot of money without having to work too much. So I'll give you an example. Something that works really well now is like sponsored posts. So people will sponsor my newsletter, sponsor my LinkedIn posts. Anyway, I have to write a newsletter every week. I insist on doing it myself because that helps structure my thoughts. And I have to write LinkedIn posts myself because that's the why people actually pay attention to me, because I give my ideas. And so anyway, writing posts is something I do. So I'd rather be paid to do it directly and talk about different stuff and everything. And so that's how I found, how to value my time, is just charge more for the same amount, or for knowledge, or for access, or everything. But I'm not still, for example, I still record my podcast. I don't do any editing. So another thing I've done, I have a podcast. I removed all the editing. I just record it, drop it on the software called Captivate, and I do a small preview with Canva. It takes me like 5 minutes. But I know I could outsource that, but I'm just too lazy to invest the time and outsource it. So what I found is, if you're like me and you're a bit afraid of outsourcing, just ask for more money. And I found that it can work. You're going to make more money, work with less people, and have more time.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually similar philosophy to me, because it's also, take that example of a podcast edit. I mean, I'm editing myself using Riverside, but like you, I've also coming from a design background, so it's really easy for me to create what you would do in Canva. I do that in Figma, but it's a template. It takes me 2 minutes maybe to get a nice headshot and add the title and export it. And actually, by the time you've sent that to an editor, done some email back and forth, dealt with the invoicing at the end of the month for 8 episodes, you probably spent more time on that. So I agree. It's, some tasks just don't make sense. You said it's lazy. I think it's just the maths on it doesn't make sense. And then, as you say, I always think of charging high price point because it signals value. It means you're going to deliver more value as well, because you're going to push yourself more, which in turn frees up time. And I think I see a big mistake with particularly solopreneurs, particularly in consulting, that they're basically freelancers doing 8 hours a day billable to a company. And then they really don't have time to sort of grow the business or be strategic in different ways.
But I think there's no shame in that. I started just like that. I was charging €80 an hour, which was way more than I was doing as an employee. And so I was working 3 days a week, full time pretty much. So I was making good money, I think around €10,000 a month. And I still had 2 days, 2 days that were free. And so that was really great. But after a few months, I got tired of just being just like a bit more expensive employee. And actually, you're not really that more expensive if you work in Europe, because if you pay someone 40 euro, it costs you 120 euro per hour, basically. So you're not that expensive. And so what I found is that it's a good way to understand and make good money to pay the bills and, do whatever you want. But then you understand stuff you like doing and stuff people will pay you. And so will pay you good money for. And so for me, I was doing everything consulting. And so after a few months, I was becoming just another employee or find a problem, become a part of it. And then it's just not super inspiring. And so I found that okay, I was really loving all the training part. I love to productize this training. And so kind of I think it's a good way when you're getting started. You bill by the hour because you need money, and then you start reflecting on what are things people want to pay you a lot of money for, specialize in that, and then you stop doing all the other crap you don't like doing, but you end up doing because you have to put food on the table.
Yeah, I agree. I think I try to say this very transparently. I talk about product BA, so 4 years. Last year, it got to the point where it's been basically it's built its own reputation, right? So I was able to cut down to, let's say, 4 hours a day. I wasn't doing prospecting, but I was writing content, running the boot camp. But to get there, firstly, when I started the business, it was like 12-hour days. And then before that, similar thing. I was freelancing consulting, let's say 3 days a week, full time. And then, even going from, 5 days a week and then cutting it down and then slowly saying, well, great, I've got some more time to focus on building a new business. So yeah, I agree. I think half the problem, and one of the reasons I started the podcast actually, is to show what is the reality. Because I don't think it's that helpful to go, here's Brian Chesky the day they started Airbnb, and then here's Brian Chesky now running a 100,000 person company, because it's so far removed from. You fast forward the really important bit, which is how do you get started? How do you get to the start point, and then how do you actually get started? Right, and I think it's great to sort of hear the reality. So SalesLab, you started 2018. You did do a conventional sales career after the aeroplane cleaning. What triggered you to quit your job? What triggered you to start SalesLab?
A really stupid boss triggered me to do that. So not stupid. No, it was just yeah, he was the person I needed the most in my life at this time because basically I had been working in a company called Applause, which was a crowd testing company, and I'd been very lucky to kind of start in 2015, and we grew the market in Europe, and I was taking care of the French market, and it grew really quickly. I was being really successful there, and so I loved it because it's been a very good confidence boost, and I knew I was capable of doing this. I learned a lot about sales. So I left the company after 2 years and a half, which is quite common in sales, to start over in another company. So great job, super well paid, great conditions. And so I started there, and I found that the product was a lot harder to sell than I expected. So it was a really complicated product to sell. And so I failed, I just like did 5 months. I closed 7,000 euro in 5 months. And so it was just really a big failure. And so on top of this, my boss was really, really bad. So not really competent. He was just in sales, often if you are managing people, yeah, people expect you to know about sales. And so if you're just manager, people will not respect you. And so he was mostly this kind of guy who worked at Google and didn't really know how to sell products that weren't well known. And so was really in a conflictual relationship, didn't really appreciate a lot of my colleagues. And at the same time, I met Skip Miller. I talked about him earlier during a sales training for this company. And so that really opened a lot of things about sales for me. And also I was like, okay, that I love what he's doing. I would love to do this job. And when I learned how much he charged the company for that, I was like, okay, I really want to do that. And so that was really good learning for me. And at some point, the pain of working for someone else, the pain of having to justify to someone what I was doing and everything, I was like, okay, I'm gone. I'm just tired of this. I'm leaving. I'm starting my own stuff on the side. We'll see how it works. And that's how I left. So yeah, I'm really happy I got this bad experience because otherwise, if things were all great, I would most likely not be doing what I'm doing.
It's interesting. Almost, I think everybody I've spoken to for this podcast, so It's only 8 people so far, but I think everyone has had a story of whether it's getting fired or horrible boss or quitting or some key big decisive life moment that they've
Yeah.
gone, okay, I need to now change direction. And I wonder whether it is a necessary part of the journey or just a small sample size that leads us there. But the thing I find very interesting in your case is and sales generally, right, is, you know, you are, to what extent do you think learning sales is the key skill as an entrepreneur? Because I know I've spoken to 600 product people in the last 5 years. They have all of the skill set to start their own business. Apart from, they have the skill set to do sales, they just don't know they do. And I
Yeah.
think that holds a huge amount of people back from starting a business. So, you know, do you see it as quite common for salespeople, if they're good, to eventually go, you know what, I know that I can work out the product stuff because I know that if I do something that is valuable, I'm going to be able to sell it. Do you think that is essential, or just a sort of a head start maybe for entrepreneurs?
So I think it's essential to know how to sell as an entrepreneur. You know, if you either know how to sell or you have a huge audience that where people just opportunities come by and it's just very easy. But still knowing like what it takes to go and sell something and what it takes to get someone to give you their money for a service or anything is really important, because it's really hard to know that you're capable of doing it without having done it. And so for me in sales, that's exactly the mindset. I was like, okay, I know I can sell, I know I have, you know, different types of stuff. And it also comes to an experience where earlier when I was doing my studies, I was part of a startup where we were building a product for general aviation, you know, like was kind of a software to manage a flight school, but also manage your, as a private pilot, your logbook and all these kind of things. And so we built a really heavy, expensive product. And so the product was really top notch for many different aspects. There were great features everywhere, but we spent pretty much $1 million Canadian dollars. So yeah, a lot of money, and no one bought it. You know, no one wanted this. They were, oh, that's great, but it's 80% done. When you've done this, and that, I'm gonna go and purchase it. And so one thing I've learned was that it's always better to go and sell something and figure out how to deliver it afterwards when you have the money than, you know, doing something and trying to sell it. So that's really something so important. And when you realize that, it's a lot simpler. So when you get money on the bank, you got resources to go and find out, you know, how to make it happen.
Yeah, I saw a really interesting statistical graph today on LinkedIn. I have to remember the guy's name. It's a study on SaaS, so software as a service companies, I think profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed that actually bootstrapped SaaS companies are making more money than venture capital backed SaaS
Yeah.
companies, startups, this is, i.e., they've started recently. And it makes a huge amount of sense because you're forced to, you know, the venture model, you are not forced to work out how you're going to make money. So you might have, you know, genius technical founder, you might even have a great product person, let's say a great two man, two one, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
team. And they could be really good. They could even understand like positioning and concepts of marketing. But if they don't have the cold, hard experience of rejection, like, you know, how many times do you think you've been rejected or ignored in your career?
Me?
Yeah.
Thousands, if not tens of
Yeah, I
thousands
was
of.
about to say 10,000. I mean, for me, it must be a few thousand now.
Yeah, all the time,
Um,
every day.
and I don't care. You clearly don't care because it's part of the, it's just part of
Yeah,
the mass equation. But I think if you don't have that experience, you're going to just avoid the hard
yeah.
questions. And I know that obviously startups at some point will grow to, you know, they'll try and parachute in a sales team and build from. But I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't have expertise. But I imagine that really hamstrings you because you can't just sort of drop some salespeople in and get them to work it out. It sort of has to be from day one in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I want to talk about principles and tactics in a second. Just final question though: how did you? You know, we talked about sales, the theory of it, but obviously starting. There's a big difference when you're working for someone and you're being paid, and, you know, Thibaut, you're doing sales for this product, to then going, okay, shit, I need to build my own product and sell it. How did you get your first sale with
So I took the
SalesLabs?
exact opposite approach of building a product and selling it. So I knew I had some I thought I had some skills about some stuff about sales. The environment was also really helping me at this time. 2020 in Berlin. So Berlin was really like a lot of people, a lot of funding. With a lot of funding, there's a lot of founders who have money but have no clue how to find money in other ways than raising money. So that was fun because a lot of people were trying to do B2B sales. And so I knew a lot about that. So I kind of talked to my network, got a few introductions, and I had two customers that landed pretty much a few weeks apart. And I landed the first one, which was a 3 months consulting agreement. As I said, 3 days a week, 80 euro an hour. I think that was something like 10,000 euro I made with them for 3 months, which isn't that much, not that much money, but it was perfect for me. For me, it was just like, okay, that's enough for me to leave and everything. So that I was really happy. And so that's how I did it, consulting, and I was part coaching, training, a bit of consulting also. And I was just more a resource for this guy. So I helped them, like organize a bit their sales team and everything. And so that's how I did it. So I closed the business. So I did a discovery call. We met, we worked
How did
together.
you find the lead? How did you
I
get the
reached out
discovery?
to someone I knew, and so I did a campaign. Say, hey guys, I'm basically looking to help anyone who has issues with sales. So I'd love to have, if you know of anyone who's struggling with anything sales, happy to have a conversation with them, a coffee, and I can see if I can help them. That's how I found it.
And you did that
So
whilst at that point.
yeah, yeah.
Because I think
So
that's a really subtle but important difference. Is clearly, if you're in a job, you're not going to post all over your LinkedIn saying, "Hey everyone, I'm thinking of leaving my job. I'm going to do this new service." But you can just direct message people,
yeah,
right? And there's no risk there at all.
and you're just having
Um,
conversations. So nobody prevents you from having conversations. If you go and target like people who are in your customer, like your customers of the company you're currently working, trying to sell them a competitive service, that's illegal in most cases, or the contract prevents you from doing that. But having conversation with people is other people, as long as there's no conflict of interest, is totally fine.
yeah, I think that's a really subtle and important difference. Okay, let's talk principles and tactics. I think many listeners are going to be coming from a product background or non-sales. They have, they understand concepts like products need to solve a problem, and we're focused on delivering outcomes. Talk to me about some of the key principles of making a sale. Right, so you have a conversation, great, but like, what happens there? I know you took like the concepts of like cold, warm, hot leads.
Mhm.
What are the key things for someone to understand?
So basically, once so let's say the prospecting part, we'll cut this into, there's the prospecting and closing. So prospecting, your goal is to book a meeting with someone. So what you want to do is build your sequence as we discussed, clear understanding of who you're going after. So what type of companies, what job titles inside of the companies. Once this is built, you can build a matrix, an ICP matrix, I call that. You're going to find what are the problems of these people. So if I'm going for a VP of sales, let's say VP of sales, they have issues, they have a problem or difficulties reaching the overall organization target for the year. And that translates into maybe forecasting inaccuracy, or they hire a lot of salespeople and then a lot of them are leaving as they go. And so if let's say you actually go and sell an onboarding software, you can pinpoint and say, okay, VP of sales, do you have issues onboarding the right people or finding quickly, what are the ones you're going to keep and what are the ones you're going to fire? And so when you found a good message, people may reply and say, hey, yeah, how can you help? And then say, hey, we can hop on a quick call. I have a few ideas I can share with you. So you can also tell me a bit more about what you're trying to achieve. And maybe I can give you some ideas. You do the call. And so once this is booked, that's the success of your prospecting pipeline or prospecting process. You've booked the call. Then you do and have the call. We're going to sit for 15 to, 45 minutes with the person. What you want to do in this call is the discovery call. You want to understand why they're here. So, what's causing you to have a conversation with me today? Why are you here? What are the outcomes you want out of this conversation? And when can you make a decision to either, do another call or maybe close business with me? When you can answer these three questions, you have a qualified opportunity, you could say. So, meaning someone may have a problem, and you're going to have a good idea of the problem. And that's more advanced, but an important thing is to be able to quantify this problem. So if I'm talking to a VP of sales, instead of saying, hey, I got this great onboarding software, you should really try that, you can say, okay, so walk me through what are your goals or what you're working on as you're looking for the next 6 months. And your VP will be, hey, we have I don't know, 100 million target right now, and we plan to do this to achieve it. And they say, okay, so we're talking right now, what's the trajectory? By doing nothing and just keeping statu quo, where are you going to end? Maybe, okay, 80 million. So it means that you have a 20 million euro problem or $20 million problem. So that's the thing. That's why we're talking. When you talk about this, a $20 million problem, if you're selling training, you can say, okay, you're going to have, or selling an onboarding part, you can say part of actually bridging this gap is hiring 20 new salespeople. But out of these 20, there's going to be maybe 5 who will not be a fit. If I can find this within 2 months instead of 9, I'm going to save a ton of money. And I'm going to be able to kind of get this 20 million problem and turn it into a 10 million problem. So you just save $10 million. And so that's the thing. If I can help you do that, there's no reason I won't charge you $1 million if I save you 10. So that's the thing. That's what you want to do, is quantify the problem. And it's a lot easier said than done. Obviously, there's a lot of things you can do. But once you have this problem, all the rest is supernatural, where people say, okay, I see the problem. I see how your solution will help me. So you do what we call the transfer of ownership, where people go from I get it to I get it. So it means they go from I know what your software does to I know what's the outcome I'm going to get with your software. And once this is done, that's where you're going to start talking pricing, budgets, and everything. And that's when you're going to be really close to closing. So that's kind of like the different phases of a sales process. But it all comes down, and there's a huge gap and focus on, there's a huge focus on this first discovery call. Because if you do it well, you're going to get all the information you need to go and have a smooth sales process. If you don't go it well, people will ghost you. You'll start having slow sales processes, and nothing's will gonna work. Nothing's will work actually.
Yeah, and by the way, for anyone listening, we're going to share. Thibaut's got really good, detailed resources. So if you want to go deeper on this, you'll be able to after. I want you to apply this in a different situation, and also selfishly for me. So beginning of this year, I've launched Break Free, so a new business, B2C, working with individual product people who want to start their own business. Let's talk firstly quantifying. Like, how would you suggest? Because obviously quantifying the desire to quit your job and start your business is a bit difficult. Like, how would you go about that question?
What's the type of people you're going after?
Let's say senior product managers based in UK, Germany.
And what's the outcome they get from working with you?
So outcome for them is getting to their first sale with a new business idea so that they can then start building momentum towards turning that into a profitable business.
So do they have to quit their job before doing their first sales or no?
But maybe that's not clear.
Yeah.
No, so it'd be on the side.
And so how, what are the problems they typically get to kind of get their first sale?
Okay, so it's going to be deciding on an idea to test, accountability to keep trying out different ideas, getting started by actually committing to a business idea, and asking somebody to pay for their product.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks to me like it's a lot of people who are maybe already in the process of thinking I need to do something and will maybe start a site.
They've been thinking about it usually for a while. Because it's, similar to, let's say yourself, you go, I've done product for, you did sales for a year, I've done product for 5 years. I sort of get what makes a business in some ways. I want to do my own, not sure where to start, or I'm scared of starting.
Yeah. Okay. Because here, the quantification will be, as you said, a bit challenging because it's more B2C, but it's going to be more an emotional quantification you can get. So it's more understanding it. And here, same thing. If people, you can train them on understanding what's the value of their time, and say, okay, so you can say, okay, if you say, I'm just not going to do anything, I want to do something, but I'm still in my comfort zone and everything and blah, 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 you may end up just wasting years of your life in a shitty job or a job that doesn't satisfy you. And so if you can calculate or quantify what's the impact, what's the real value of a year, a month, or an hour of your life, that can be a good thing, where you say, okay, what's the risk you're having? And so for me, risk was really, when I left my job, I was thinking and I was reading a bunch of different blog posts and everything. And what's the risk and what's the riskiest situation? Like living and doing my own stuff, knowing that I have no debt, no kid. At the time I had no kid. I basically there's zero chance I'm not gonna have food on the table, zero chance I won't have a home. So basically, I'm just risking nothing. And so if I stay in a job, there's 100% risk that I'm gonna get fired at some point. There's 100% risk that I'm gonna make someone else rich. And so I was really quantifying this risk and saying, if I want to build the life I want, what's the riskiest, like the thing that's gonna, bring me closer to this? And so I found I was quitting my job. And so that was really this kind of thing. So I think taking it more as a risk, and what's the size of the risk, and what's the, if you can quantify that, that would really help, in these conversations. Because a lot of time people, they just need the situation to become so unbearable that they will
Yeah.
quit. And so for me, that I got lucky was the case. So it's more help them kind of, you know, yeah, help them quantify this and see, okay, the situation is already unbearable because, you're wasting your life basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also something that I think, sorry, just coming back to that, the general question there. I think that's the key point, right? Is it's not always, and in many cases, not usually financial that is the problem. It is, or it is emotional, physical, health related, sexual relationship related at times as well. So I think just understand it's not always about the money is really important with any product you're selling. There are different or multifaceted problems there. And actually, one thing I talk about is, I know for myself, I wasted 4 years like flirting with some business ideas, like flirting with freelancing, until I, January 2020, said, nobody's coming for you. I need to basically start a business myself. And only when that happened, that realization, did I really sort of get a big win, let's say, in my entrepreneurial career. So I think that's really valuable. And actually, something I do is a fear setting exercise day one with clients, which is really this. It's saying, okay, well, what are the risks? Let's break them down. Let's see what the cost of inaction is. Is it that sense of not unfulfillment because you're not doing what you really want to do? These kind of things I think are really important. Perhaps what I could do is take that out, include it in the sales process, or even do like a free workshop with people, for example, before pitching a paid offer. Interesting.
Yeah, and you see, in life, it's just you realize how unimportant we are. So for me, it's really. I was listening to a song. It was like we're just dust in the wind. You just feel like that. So what are you risking? Seriously, what's the risk? And often there's people who don't have the luxury of trying this, and that's the vast majority of people on Earth. They simply don't have the luxury. But the ones you're talking to, they do. They have this luxury of trying stuff, failing, and it's gonna work, or it doesn't work, but there won't be like huge consequences on their lives. So I think that's really important to kind of understand that and try to list what is the worst that can happen. And you just test it, and you test and you see, okay, the worst can happen is really not that bad. So for us, that's what we've thought. And like I think that's a really good realization in your life.
100%. I was writing about this today. I mean, it's almost always ego that is blocking us from something. Ego saying, "Oh my God, everyone's paying attention. So if I fail, then they're all going to laugh at me."
They won't even care. They won't even notice.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Not only do they don't care, they don't even notice. I think one tactic that I found very effective myself and for teaching other people is just everything's an experiment. When you call something a business or your startup, it's this big, solid, unchangeable thing. Whereas when you just go, oh, I've got this idea, let's just go and ask 5 people, like WhatsApp 5 of my friends, what do you think? Would you be interested in paying for it? Great. Okay, here's a payment link. I'll deliver the solution next week. Then it's just, it's not scary because, again, as you say, what is there to lose? Like, you're not banking everything on it. You're not placing your reputation on it. So that, even if someone pays attention, it's just not, it's an experiment. It's not a business that you're building. And then obviously eventually it becomes a business further down the line. I think final 2 questions on sort of tactics, and I think it's easy to, when you're new to something, particularly, to try and just copy and paste and say, Thibaut's using LinkedIn, and I've tried to avoid this in my sort of sales career following you, but it's easy generally to go, so Thibaut's using LinkedIn and he's using this, download file or course to sort of bring people into his ecosystem, his funnel. What do you think the principles are when it comes to, let's say, choosing platform like LinkedIn versus Instagram? And I want to give a free piece of value, ebook versus PDF or online course. Like, how do you make those kind of decisions?
So I mean, you talked about Indie Hacker, and I think it's good because you found that's a great place to go and try people who are solopreneurs or wanting to do that. So really, first thing is understand if people are actually that you want to talk to or that you want to sell to or who have a problem you can help with. Understand where they hang out. And so virtually often for me, that's LinkedIn. People are a lot on LinkedIn. It can be Instagram, Indie Hacker, as you said. So it's really just finding the platform where people are hanging out and start becoming a part of it. So as you said, commenting regularly, posting regularly, providing value. And as you do that, um, you're going to start having people who pay attention to what you say, asking you questions. Oh, why do you do that? How do you do that? You talked about this thing. I'm curious to know. How can you, tell me more? So that's all these kind of things is really finding places where they hang out. And sometimes they don't hang out virtually, so they hang out at conferences or at the golf course or whatever. So it's really about finding these sets. So if you were thinking, I was thinking about the Tinder for old people. I mean, that's not gonna work because they don't know how to use a phone. But if you want to go, for example, and talk to old people, you want to go and find the nurses that are going home because they spend their day talking to old people every day. So these are the right type of people you can talk to kind of access them. So that's the thing, is finding where people hang out, who they see, who they meet every day. And so that's the good thing about humans. They're very social creatures. So they always hang out, except some people who are really introvert and don't want to do that. But we live in community, we build communities all the time. So that's really the thing, is finding these places.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's think outside the box and also just trying lots. Yeah, Indie Hackers is not a website that I've ever used really. And I was like, well, you know what, LinkedIn is not where my group is, my market's hanging out. So I'm going to have to look elsewhere. And
Yeah.
that's Indie Hackers. Part of it is doing the podcast, sort of long-term play there. YouTube, I think, is also where my market hangs out. Awesome. I want to wrap up with just a couple of quickfire questions. What one piece of advice would you give an aspiring entrepreneur to get started?
So sell before you build. That's the thing I would say. Get a meeting link ready, like a payment link, Stripe link, PayPal, whatever. Get people to give you money and then build the solution.
Yeah, completely agree. I think really great advice. And I think in your case, also, let's say, okay, great. I understand that theoretically, like that's common in the product world. We sell before we build. What advice would you give them specifically related to sales? Right, so let's say you've never done sales before. You might have, oh my God, I've got to set this funnel, and then I'm going to have to actually speak to people. What advice would you give there?
So the advice is really just don't try to sell anything. Try to find a problem, and understand what are the problems they have, and that's really mostly what I would say. Is just keep this in mind. Go and see, okay, what are the problems you have? I want to learn more about this problem without trying to go and sell something, and this will guide everything. So if you see everyone has the same problem, and what have they tried about this, that's a really good way to go and yeah, start selling. So if you find the problem, the solution will be super obvious to you, even at some point, and then you can build something.
Great advice again. Thibaut, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Every time we speak, I learn something new about sales. Any calls to action, any links for people? I know obviously you post on LinkedIn every day, so do follow Thibaut if you're in any way interested in sales. If you've made it to the end of the podcast, I imagine you are. Any calls to action?
Yeah, so you can. First thing you can do is follow me on LinkedIn. So there's I post every day. I talk a lot about sales, prospecting, a lot of different things. So I'll share the link with you. And another link I have is a prospecting template swipe file. So it's basically a file I'm kind of keeping alive all the time, where I give prospecting messages. So specifically, if you're trying to, get people to reply to you and book meeting with them, these messages really, really help you. So you can download this for free, and I'll also share the link with you. And so you're going to get access to that. And there's going to be like an onboarding sequence to my newsletter, which is coming every Thursday. So when you download that, you get access to this. And then you're going to be able to see, what I do every day on, to get some really tactical advice. So these two links, LinkedIn profile and the swipe file, can be really helpful for everyone.
Excellent. I'll share those links, and I've paid for, I think, 2 different products. So Thibaut's well worth the money. Thibaut, I really appreciate your work. You're inspiring for me. You show up every day. You're providing value. You stay focused. So I think it's been great to sort of see and sort of follow that journey and try and emulate it a little bit. So thanks so much for sharing today, and I think people get a huge amount of value from this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Henry. It was really nice chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Refounders. If you enjoyed this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. If you're feeling generous, why not share with a friend?